In section 261 of Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche analyzes the phenomenon of vanity, and he begins by trying to look at it from the perspective of the noble personality. When the noble or strong person sees vanity, what does he see? And it seems that vanity will be a kind of a mystery to the strong person. Among the weak and the base, this phenomenon of vanity seems to consist of having a good opinion of yourself despite knowing that it is in no way deserved. It seems to consist in forcing yourself to think better of yourself than you merit, or celebrating other people's praise of you despite its not being earned or justified. To the strong personality, then, vanity seems like a bizarre combination of bad taste, lack of self-respect, a kind of Baroque irrationality, so unusual, so strange that the noble spirit might think it is quite rare in the world. Surely, he will say, no large number of people can really force themselves to think this way about themselves. But unfortunately, vanity is all too common in the world. And it provides a helpful contrast for us with the self-valuation and self-worth of the strong, value-creating, noble personality type that was described in the previous section on master morality. The key to unlocking the mystery of vanity, Nietzsche says, is for the noble spirit to realize that throughout history, the common man is only what he is considered to be. That is, his being, his self-worth, comes only from his being perceived and being imposed upon by others. He receives his value and his identity from outside forces, from those who create values, whoever they happen to be at his place and time. Not being a value creator, he cannot find any sort of inner, grounded sense of his own worth. He is something like a value sponge rather than a value creator. This brings up again the contrast between the strong type and the weak type of human personalities, the type that can create values and does so sort of for its own glory and as its own best activity, and the weak type of human personality, which is, I might say, value sterile, which is value receiving, but never value creating. We might even say at its extremes, this weak type of personality is unable even to fathom the prospect of values being created by a person out of his own resources. The weak man cannot, and certainly will not, posit values himself. That's just not something that he is aware of being able to do. He is accustomed then to being told what he is, to receiving his role, to receiving his worth, his value, his place in the world from others. He receives his self-worth from outside of himself by whatever the dominant value-creating force is, whether it's the master for the slave, or society at large for the democratic person living in a democratic age, or perhaps from the church for the Christian, Nietzsche says. Modern democratic European culture, Nietzsche says, is a mixture of these master and slave drives, resulting from a kind of long intermixing of these two different personality types and tribes. And so we find the phenomenon of vanity is the result of the combination of two different drives in the human person. There is this relatively rare, masterful drive among the select elite, the noble persons, to think well of oneself and to think well of one's own, just because it is one's own, this ability to assert value, to create value in the world. In the modern age, this has become widespread. It has, in a certain form, been spread out among the masses, so that everybody wants to think well of himself. Everybody wants to think well of his own tribe, his own nation, his own team. But there is also, beneath this, in the common people, Nietzsche says, an older, more slavish instinct, an instinct for submission, this long-trained personality instinct or impulse to submit to the valuations that others express of me. And it's the combination of these two drives that produces the phenomenon of vanity, in which a person welcomes every good opinion of himself, regardless of its truth. Every good opinion he hears of himself pleases him, and every bad opinion of himself that he hears expressed, it pains him, causes him distress. The modern self feels subjected to these opinions just because they have been expressed. And that's because he has this deep sort of instinctive slavish drive to accept what others present to him of his own value and his own worth, this instinct to submit. So Nietzsche writes, it's the slave lingering in the blood of the vain person that seduces him to good opinions of himself. He becomes, as it were, a kind of collector of good opinions about himself. He assembles all these good opinions and then prostrates himself before them as though he had not himself just now collected them and set them up for his own admiration and edification. And so he concludes this chapter by noting, vanity is an atavism. It is a kind of evolutionary leftover. It is the result of some kind of adaptive drive deep in our ancestral past. It remains as a sort of slavish element in the blood of the common people today of weaker personality types. And that, as an explanation for the noble personality, that is how and why you find vanity so common in the modern world. That brings us to the end of section 261. We'll talk about section 262 in the next video. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.